Shalom Aleichem. Welcome to the B'nai David podcast. This is the first time we're attempting to have a session in English. And my name is Netanel Eliashiv. I teach here at the B'nai David Pre-Army Yeshiva program. So welcome aboard to our podcast. And anybody who is watching this or listening to it on Hanukkah, may I add, Hanukkah Sameach, Happy Hanukkah. So we want to deal with one question regarding the famous Braita that tells us the story of Hanukkah. As everybody knows, we don't have much material in the Talmud regarding Hanukkah, just a couple of pages in Masechet Shabbat. And the Braita teaches us, "Shekshenichnesu Yevanim la'ichal, tim'u kol hashmanim." When the Greeks entered Beit HaMikdash, they started defiling all of the holy oil. And this is a very strange thing, because why would anybody conquering even desecrating a holy place, why would they start looking for all the bottles of oil? To defile the oil, they would have to find all of the bottles and open them and touch them. And that's a very strange thing to do. Why would anybody do that? Now, I'm not saying that there's no possible answer to this, because maybe they just destroyed everything that they found. And that's what Chazal mean when they said that but they don't say that they destroyed it. They said, Tim'u kol hashmanim. They defiled the oil. How would they even know how to do that halachically? Well, we might say that they had some mityaven, some assimilated Jew with them who was giving them all kinds of instructions on what to do to ruin the Jews' religious life. I'm not saying that there's no possible answer, but there's an original, interesting, and enlightening answer in Rav Kook's Perush on the Agadah. It's called Ein Ayah. Ein Ayah, a wonderful commentary on the Agadot of Masechet Brachot, Shabbat, a few other Masechtot. It's becoming it's already widespread in Israel, and it's becoming a bit widespread in the United States as well. Wonderful commentary. So what does Rav Kook say? Rav Kook says that the story of Hanukkah is the recurring confrontation between Klal Yisrael and not exactly the Goyim, the other nations, but the more cultured nations. Because when we had a confrontation with the nations, let's say the Shivat Amamim, when we entered Eretz Yisrael, so it wasn't a big question of good or bad. Nobody in Am Yisrael really believed. Chazal say that nobody really believed in the idol worshipping and all of that. It was comfortable to adopt those beliefs, because it allowed people to live an easy life morally, and it allowed them to do averot befarhesia, Chazal say, in public, transgressions. But nobody really believed it. It was pretty clear to everybody what is good and what is bad. But the confrontation with Greece was different, because Greece, it was mixed. There were wonderful things in the Greek culture. Chazal say regarding the pasuk, Yaft Elohim leyefet v'yishkon be'ohlei Shem. Chazal say Yafifuto shel Yefet, the beauty of Yefet, which is the father of Yavan, of Greece, will be in the tents of Shem, in the tents of the Jewish. We're called Semites, right? That's why the people who don't like us so much, they're called anti-Semites. So the beauty of Greece should be in the tents of Shem, which means that there are certain things we should pick up from the general culture. And there's always one nation which is dominant in the world culture. That's the nation that everybody imitates. That's the nation that everybody knows about its culture. Like it was Greek, and then it was Rome, and there were certain nations in Europe who dominated the world culture for a certain period. I think in our time maybe it's the United States of America, because everybody in every country, they know their own TV shows, but they also know about the American TV shows. They have their own restaurants, but everybody also, they have McDonald's. And they have their own songs, but everybody knows the American songs, because there's always one nation that everybody's trying to imitate and learn from their culture, because they have a lot of good accomplishments and achievements. And Chazal say there's a contradiction in the book of Yechezkel. In one place it says, "Ukemishpetei hagoyim asher svivotechem asitem." The Navi he's critical because we're doing what the goyim around us are doing. But there's another pasuk saying, "Ukemishpetei hagoyim asher svivotechem lo asitem." which means that he's criticizing us for not doing things that the other nations around us are doing. Now, there are all kinds of ways to answer this question, but Chazal say, "Kametukanim shebahem lo asitem, kamekulkalim shebahem asitem." The good ways, the things that we should strive to emulate, those things we weren't learning from the cultures around us. But the bad things, that's the worst. Because if you're learning everything, you learn the bad, but at least you also learn the good. And if you don't learn anything, and you're just living your own life and with no connection to the outer world, so you're missing out on a lot of important things for your national life, but at least you're not learning all the bad things. The worst thing you can do is to learn the bad things and not learn from the good things. And that was what was happening in that era. That's what was happening in the era of Yechezkel. So Rav Kook says, when we're confronting Greek culture, and Greece is just an example, we have to decide what's the good that we should learn from and what's the bad. But the important thing, he says, is that even when you are learning from the good, you have to be very careful. Rav Kook always strive to unite things, and not to say no, rather to look at the way we can combine all kinds of values and things that are happening in the world around us, but the Kodesh and the Chol, the holy, the sacred, with the mundane, everyday. It all has a role in our life, especially in the national life of Klal Yisrael, because to have a state, to have a nation, you have to have the best science and technology, and also certain things that you should learn from other cultures. But Rav Kook always emphasizes, when you're learning from other cultures, you have to be very careful. You have to be careful, and you have to be very selective. And when Chazal say, Nichnesu Yevanim la'ichal, it means they entered. There are two problems. First of all, they entered. Instead of us staying at our home and opening windows to the world around us and choosing selectively what we should learn from other nations, they invaded us. Nichnesu Yevanim. The second problem, according to Rav Kook, is where they entered. Nichnesu Yevanim la'ichal. The Heichal, the Mikdash, is a parable for our inner life. Rav Kook says, even when we are learning from the good things that we should learn from other nations in the world, it should always be on the second layer, and the external layer. But the inner life, that should always be Kodesh LaHashem. That should always have the special place for Hashem, for the Torah, and for holiness. And when you let it enter your inner life, that's a problem. כשנכנסו יוונים להיכל, טימאו כל השמנים בהיכל. So Rav Kook doesn't say this, exactly, but if you read the Perush, you can understand that you shouldn't read it the way we usually read it. You shouldn't read כשנכנסו יוונים להיכל, טימאו כל השמנים שבהיכל, which means they actively defiled the holy oil. Rather, כשנכנסו יוונים להיכל, טמאו כל השמנים שבהיכל, which means it's not that the Greeks did it. It just happened. Because when you have grease inside your heart, inside your inner world, then automatically your oil becomes defiled. What is the oil? The oil is always a symbol of Torah. And when the counterculture of Judaism, when other cultures, when they enter our inner sanctum, then we lose the ability to live a real life of Torah. And then we might have certain traditions. We might eat cholent and Shabbos and have donut sufganiyot on Hanukkah, and all kinds of other bits of tradition and gefilte fish, and maybe and I remember there was a survey asking American Jews what's the most Jewish thing. I think they said Jewish comedy. So we might have the comedy, and we might have a general feeling of Judaism, but our inner life will be defiled. Our inner life will actually not be with the Jewish spirit, rather with another spirit. And that's what the danger is when we're mixing with other cultures. We always have to have the most inner place. It should be protected, and it should be dedicated to Torah. We mentioned before Chazal saying, Yafifuto shel Yefet be'oholei Shem. Ohel is a tent. That's a temporary dwelling. In another place, Rav Kook says the same idea in different words. He says that the beauty of the Greek culture or any other culture in the world, it can be be'ohalei Shem, in the ohel, in the tent, but not in the heichal, not in our inner life. I remember once, many years ago, I was at a shul here in Israel, but there was an American speaking, saying a Dvar Torah, and he said that he had two great influences that taught him everything he knows about life and values and morals. And I was listening, it sounded interesting. So he said, the first is the Torah. Whenever somebody says, the first is the Torah, that means there's a second, that's a problem. When you're speaking about the light that's guiding your life, and you say there are two, that's a bit of a problem. And then the other source that he cited was the American Constitution. Now, the American Constitution, that's a very impressive document. I suggest people read it, and there's much to learn from it. But when somebody's standing in a shul with Aron Kodesh behind him, and he says there are two great loves of his life, and they're equal, that's the way he explained it, as if they're equal, the Torah and any other content, even the American Constitution, that's a problem. And Rav Kook, he was writing Einayah before he reached Eretz Yisrael, before he became the chief rabbi of Israel, but he was still in Eastern Europe, but he was dealing with the problem of the Haskalah. The Haskalah was the demand in the 19th century that the Jews will open up to the world around them and to other cultures. And Rav Kook wasn't totally against this. There were some Rabbanim that said, we don't care what's going on in the outer world, and the moment we will allow people to learn other things, they'll stray away from Judaism. Now, Rav Kook wasn't totally against it, and he understood that there is a certain need. But the question is how you do it. When you do it, you have to be very careful. You always have to have the difference between Kodesh v'chol. In Havdalah, we say, Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'chol. We're not against the chol. We're not against the secular. But there always has to be the Havdalah. There always has to be the difference, the differentiation. So when you do it carefully, you can combine it. Rashar Hirsch, Toraim Derech Eretz, religious Zionism, or modern Orthodox. There are ways, and there are wonderful ways to combine it. And then there can be a lot of Kiddush Hashem. The Vilna Gaon even says that anybody who is lacking in his secular knowledge is lacking even more in his Torah knowledge, because a thorough understanding of Torah, you also have to know some things about the world that is not Torah, about secular life. And like we said before, especially if you want to establish a state, if you want to have a national, to live on the national level, of course you need much knowledge of a lot of secular things. And it should be a part of our life, and that's obvious. But you have to do it carefully, and you have to leave the heichal clean. When the Greeks entered the heichal, then the shemen, the kedusha in life, becomes defiled. Now this is very nice as an idea. How does it work practically? How did it work practically? I mean, why would the shemen, why would the oil really be tameh, be defiled? So there is a Gemara in Chulin which can also help us understand this on the practical level. The Gemara in Chulin says that the Greeks, they used to have scalps. I think we would call what the Gemara says in Chulin. They say, Legion ha'over mimakom la'makom v'nichnas lebayit, habayit tameh. A legion, non-Jewish soldiers that go from place to place and they enter a home, the whole home becomes tameh, becomes defiled. Why? The tumat ohel. Okay, the question is why. So the Gemara says in Chulin, she'en lecha kol legion v'legion she'en lo kama kar kefilin, which means they used to cut off the scalps of their victims, And maybe as a way of deterring their enemies, and maybe they believed in it as some kind of a mystic thing, they used to enter places wearing those scalps. So practically, that would make everything tameh. That would make all of the oil in the Beit Hamikdash defiled. So, according to this explanation by Rav Kook, that's a big problem, because he says the moment the Yevaniyut, the Greek spirit, enters our inner life, then everything becomes defiled. You'll no longer have the strength of Torah to enlighten your life and to lift us up. So that's very pessimistic. That means that there's no way back. But we know that the story of Hanukkah ended with them coming back, with them managing to defeat the Greeks and also to restart their spiritual life. And that gave us the basis for the Torah Shebaal Peh and the Tanaim, the Mishnah, and afterwards the Talmud. That all came because of that wonderful era in our national life. Well, how is that possible if everything became defiled? Says Rav Kook, even when everything becomes defiled, you always have the Pach Shemen Shel Kohen Gadol. Rav Kook himself was a Kohen, and many people perceived him as one who was worthy to be the Kohen Gadol. Even when everything seems to be over and the whole spirit is non-Jewish and the Torah becomes just some kind of folklore and something weak that can't enrich in our spiritual life and lift us up, you should always know there's a place where the Yevaniyut, where the Greek culture, it can enter. And that's called the Pach Shemen Shel Kohen HaGadol. That's called the special inner spirit. That's Sgulat Yisrael. That's our Jewish neshama. And nothing can extinguish that. It's always there. And whenever it seems to be that it's not revealed, and you can't find the contact to that inner life, you should know that it's building up. It's building up on the inside. And just like a can of soda, the more you shake it, it'll open up and just explode. The same thing with our neshama. And that always happened in our history. There were many eras, including in recent history, when it looked as if, the whole thing with religion and Torah and our relationship with Hashem, it's over. It looked like a part of the past. People wanted to put it in the museum, and they thought there's no future for a real, vibrant Jewish life. But whenever that happened, and we did know some dark times spiritually, whenever that happened, Klal Yisrael bounced back. And it turned out that we're still here, and Am Yisrael Chai. Am Yisrael Chai also on the physical level. Whenever it seemed that we were being counted out, we managed to come back, but also on the spiritual level. And today in Eretz Yisrael, Baruch Hashem, the Torah is very much alive. The yeshiva world is flourishing. Judaism is flourishing. Jewish culture is flourishing. Jewish music. Everybody seems to be studying. Everybody seems to want a connection to the Parashat Shavua and to Judaism. Different parts of Israeli society are looking for that connection in their own special ways, but it's happening. It's very much alive here. So we should never despair. Our strategy should always be to preserve our inner world and not let the external world enter our inner sanctum. But even when we see that happening around us, we should always have emunah, we should always have faith in our godly neshama, and we should always know that Klal Yisrael will always bounce back and will come back, just as happened in Hanukkah. Bayamim Ahem Bazman Hazeh. Happy Hanukkah.